I have been asked many times across the centuries what the single most important thing I ever learned about power is. The question assumes there is one thing. There is not one thing. There are many things operating together, forming a single coherent understanding of how the world actually works and what it requires of the man who wishes to navigate it successfully rather than be consumed by it. I spent 14 years in the service of the Florentine Republic learning these things not through comfortable contemplation but through the specific, costly, sometimes brutal experience of watching what happens when they are applied and what happens when they are not. I watched men rise and fall. I watched empires built and dismantled. I watched men of extraordinary capability destroy themselves through a single consistent error and men of modest capability outlast their more gifted rivals through the patient application of principles that most men never bother to understand. What I learned became the Prince. It became the Discourses. It became a body of work that has outlasted every man I ever knew and every political configuration I ever served. Today I give you the 21 laws that form the foundation of that body of work. Not as a list to memorize, as a philosophy to inhabit. Each law is specific. Each one connects to the others. And together they form the most complete understanding of strategic intelligence that I know how to offer. My name is Niccolò Machiavelli, and this is what I actually learned. The first law. See the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. This is the foundation of everything else. The man who navigates the world based on how he wishes it were will be surprised, repeatedly and expensively, by how it actually is. The man who sees clearly, who strips away the comfortable illusions that sentiment and wishful thinking produce, navigates with a precision that the wishful man never achieves. I did not arrive at my understanding of human nature through cynicism. I arrived at it through observation. I watched men behave across 14 years of genuine pressure and genuine stakes. And what I observed was not what the moralists and the idealists said I should observe. It was what was actually there. See what is actually there. Not what you wish were there. Not what you were told should be there. What is actually, observably, consistently there. Everything else builds on this. The second law. Understand that people are driven by self-interest above all else. Not exclusively. Not without exception. But primarily, consistently, and with a reliability that no amount of expressed altruism or genuine good intention fully overrides when the pressure becomes significant enough. The practical consequence is this. When you are trying to understand why someone behaved in a particular way, start with their interests. What did they stand to gain? What did they stand to lose? How does this outcome affect their position, their resources, their security, their status? Answer those questions accurately and you will understand their behavior with a precision that appeals to their stated values never produces. This is not cynicism. It is accuracy. And accuracy, in the domain of human behavior, is the most useful quality you can develop. The third law. Control your reactions or your reactions will control you. I have written about this in other contexts at length. Here I want to state it as simply as possible. The man who reacts in the moment of provocation has surrendered control of the interaction to the provocation. He is no longer choosing. He is being chosen for by the emotional force of what has been done to him. The man who holds his reaction, who sits with the provocation long enough for the emotional force to pass and the clarity to return, retains control. He responds from his own assessment of what serves his interests rather than from the immediate force of what has been done to him. Develop the capacity to hold your reactions. Not forever. Long enough for the clarity to return. In that space between provocation and response, everything is determined. The fourth law. Never reveal everything you know. The man who shows all his cards has nothing left to play. Information is leverage. The man who knows more than he reveals holds an advantage over everyone who does not know what he knows and does not know that he knows it. The moment he reveals what he knows, that advantage dissolves. Speak less than you know. Always. In every situation and every relationship, maintain some portion of your understanding as a reserve that has not yet been deployed. Not because deception is virtuous, because the reserve itself is power. The man who has more than he has shown is always worth returning to. The man who has shown everything has nothing left that compels return. The fifth law. Build reputation before you need it. Reputation is capital. It produces returns in the form of trust, opportunity, credit, and alliance that money alone cannot buy. And like all capital, it must be accumulated before it can be deployed. The worst time to build reputation is when you need it. When the crisis has arrived and the opportunity has presented itself and the moment is here, the reputation that would allow you to navigate it effectively must already exist. It is built through consistent behavior across time, through being reliably what you say you are, through delivering what you promise, through maintaining your standards when maintaining them costs you something real. Build it now, for the moment that has not yet arrived, because it is always arriving. The sixth law. Choose your alliances with more care than you choose your enemies. Most men pay careful attention to their enemies and insufficient attention to their allies. This is an error. The wrong ally is more dangerous than an acknowledged enemy. An enemy you know to be an enemy you can prepare for. An ally who is secretly opposed to your interests, or who will shift allegiance when his interests shift, sits inside your defenses. He knows your position. He knows your plans. He knows your vulnerabilities. Choose allies based on aligned interests rather than personal warmth. Personal warmth is pleasant, but it is not durable under genuine pressure. Aligned interests hold because the holding serves both parties. And when interests diverge, acknowledge the divergence honestly rather than maintaining the form of alliance without the substance. A dissolved alliance is less dangerous than a hollow one. The seventh law. Fortune favors the prepared. I have written about Fortuna extensively, about the fact that roughly half of what happens to any man is beyond his control. The timing of events, the movement of circumstances, the decisions of other people, the interventions of chance. But here is what I want you to understand about Fortuna that most men who cite this principle miss entirely. Fortune does not favor the bold in the reckless sense. It favors the prepared. The man who has been building steadily and quietly and consistently and who, when fortune moves, has exactly what the moment requires already in place. Preparation is what converts fortune's arrival from a neutral event into an advantage. The unprepared man is moved by fortune. The prepared man uses it. Prepare for the moment that has not yet arrived. It is the only way to be ready when it does. The eighth law. The man who tries to please everyone pleases no one. I watched men of genuine capability neutralize that capability entirely through the compulsive pursuit of universal approval. Every position softened to avoid offense. Every strong view qualified to accommodate disagreement. Every decision made with one eye on the reaction it would produce rather than the outcome it would achieve. The result was a man of no particular position and no particular influence. Because influence requires a point of view. And a point of view requires the willingness to be wrong, to be disagreed with, to hold a position that not everyone finds comfortable. Have a position. Hold it. Adjust it when the evidence requires adjustment, not when the social pressure requires accommodation. The man with a genuine position is worth engaging with. The man who agrees with everyone is worth nothing to anyone. The ninth law. Timing is everything. The right action at the wrong moment produces worse results than no action at all. I learned this through the most painful possible experience. Watching men of genuine capability and correct strategic assessment destroy the value of their correct assessment by acting on it before the conditions were ready to receive it. The assessment was right. The moment was wrong. And the wrong moment converted a correct assessment into an expensive error. Develop the capacity to hold a correct assessment without acting on it until the moment is right. This requires the patience I have described in other contexts. The discipline of continuing to build, continuing to prepare, continuing to wait, until the convergence of conditions that makes the correct action actually correct in the specific moment of its execution. Read the moment, not just the strategy. The moment. The 10th law. Strength respected. Weakness exploited. There is no third option. This is perhaps the most uncomfortable of the 21 laws because it contradicts what most people prefer to believe about the role of compassion and understanding in human interaction. I'm not saying compassion has no place. I am saying that in the specific domain of power and influence, what people respond to is not your intention but your capacity. They respond to whether you can do what you say you can do, whether you will follow through on what you have committed to, whether the consequences you have promised for certain actions will actually be delivered. The man who is reliably capable, who delivers what he promises and follows through on what he commits to, is respected. The man who is not, regardless of how good his intentions, is exploited. Build genuine capability, then demonstrate it reliably. That is the only path to genuine respect that does not depend on the continued goodwill of the people respecting you. The 11th law. The man who hesitates in the moment of decision has already decided against himself. Hesitation is not caution. Caution is the preparation that precedes the decision. Hesitation is the failure to decide after the preparation is complete. The caution of the man who prepares thoroughly and then acts decisively is a strength. The hesitation of the man who has prepared and then cannot bring himself to act is a weakness that his opponents will exploit with a speed that his preparation cannot protect against. Decide. When the preparation is complete and the moment is right and the clarity is available, decide. Not because certainty is available. It never is. But because the cost of continued hesitation in the moment of decision is higher than the cost of the wrong decision made decisively and corrected. Then correct course if correction is required. Do not wait for the perfect certainty that never arrives. The 12th law. Protect your center. Never let anyone define who you are. The man whose identity is defined by the opinions of others is permanently vulnerable. Because opinions shift. Because the people whose opinions you have allowed to define you will eventually have opinions that do not serve you. And when they do, you will have no fixed center to return to. Build your identity from the inside. From your own values, honestly examined and honestly applied. From your own standards, held regardless of what the people around you are doing. From your own direction, chosen through genuine self-examination rather than borrowed from the consensus around you. That identity, built from the inside, holds under pressure that would dissolve an identity built from outside validation. Because it does not depend on the continued approval of anyone. It depends only on the continued application of what you have chosen to be. Choose what you are. Then be it consistently. Regardless. The 13th law. Make yourself necessary before you ask for anything. This is the law that most men violate most consistently in the domain of professional and political advancement. They seek before they have given. They ask before they have made themselves worth asking. They present their needs and ambitions before they have demonstrated the capability that would make meeting those needs and supporting those ambitions a reasonable investment for the people they are asking. The sequence is always this. Make yourself genuinely necessary. Demonstrate genuine capability over a sufficient period. Build genuine trust through consistent, reliable behavior. And then, from the position of genuine indispensability that this sequence produces, ask for what you want. From that position, asking is rarely necessary. Because the people you have made yourself necessary to are already motivated to give you what you need to continue being necessary to them. Build the value first. The ask will take care of itself. The 14th law. Never do to others what you are not prepared to have done to you. Not as a moral principle, as a strategic one. The man who uses methods he would find unacceptable if used against him has set the terms of engagement for every opponent he will ever face. He has communicated that those methods are available, and they will be used against him. The man who maintains a consistent standard of conduct, who uses only methods he would accept being used against himself, constrains the terms of engagement in ways that protect him from the specific escalations that his own methods would otherwise invite. This is not ethics for its own sake. It is strategic consistency. The methods you use become the methods available to everyone you deal with. Choose them accordingly. The 15th law. The man who builds in secret arrives at a position the man who builds publicly never reaches. I have written about strategic discretion in other contexts. Here I want to state it as a law of power rather than a law of wealth. The man whose building is visible invites interference before the building is complete. His opponents can see what he is doing and organize against it. His allies can see what he is doing and calibrate their own positioning accordingly. His rivals can see what he is doing and accelerate their own building in response. The man who builds quietly arrives at a position of genuine strength before anyone has understood that building was occurring. By the time his position becomes visible, it is already too secure to be easily dislodged. Build quietly. Arrive fully. Reveal from strength. The 16th law. Manage the narrative or the narrative will manage you. Every significant action you take will be interpreted. The interpretation will spread. And the spread interpretation will shape how people respond to you in ways that the action itself, however correct, cannot fully determine. The man who understands this does not leave the interpretation to chance. He considers, before he acts, how the action will be read. He shapes, through the context he provides and the framing he establishes, the interpretation that is most consistent with his actual intention and most useful to his ongoing position. This is not manipulation. It is the accurate recognition that meaning is not inherent in actions. It is produced by the interpretation of them. An interpretation can be shaped. Shape it deliberately. Or accept the interpretation that others, with their own interests, will impose on what you have done. The 17th law. Enemies are information. Study them more carefully than you study your allies. The man who dismisses his enemies, who does not take them seriously, who does not study their capabilities and their intentions and their likely responses to his actions, is not protected from them by his dismissal. He is made more vulnerable by it. Your enemies know things about you that your allies do not. They see your weaknesses with a clarity that affection prevents your allies from achieving. They have thought about how to defeat you with a focus that no one who wishes you well has applied. Study them, not to become like them, to understand what they understand about you, and to address what they have correctly identified before they have the opportunity to exploit it. Your enemies are your most honest assessors. Use them accordingly. The 18th law. The man who learns from every outcome, success and failure alike, accumulates an advantage that no single talent produces. I observed this across my entire career. The men who built the most durable capability were not the men who succeeded most consistently. They were the men who extracted the most from every outcome, including the failures. The failure examined honestly produces understanding that success never reveals. It shows you what your model of the situation was missing, what you assumed that was not true, what you overlooked that mattered, what you would need to do differently to produce a better outcome in a similar situation. The man who treats failure as information rather than as verdict accumulates a quality of understanding that the man who only succeeds, or who treats failure as something to be forgotten rather than examined, never develops. Examine every outcome. Extract everything it has to teach. Carry the understanding forward. The 19th law. Know when to act alone and when to build coalition. The wrong choice costs more than the decision you were trying to make. Some situations require the speed and coherence that only individual action can produce. The coalition building that would produce broader support takes time that the situation does not have. The compromises that coalition requires would dilute the action to the point of ineffectiveness. Other situations require the legitimacy, the resources, and the durability that only coalition can provide. The individual action that would be swift and coherent would also be isolated and vulnerable to the organized opposition that coalition would have deterred. Read each situation honestly, not through the lens of your preference for action or your preference for consensus, through the honest assessment of what the situation actually requires. Then act accordingly, alone or together, depending on what the situation needs, not on what your personality prefers. The 20th law. The long game always defeats the short one. Build for decades, win in years. I watched men optimize for the immediate outcome at the expense of the long position more times than I can count. They won the negotiation and lost the relationship. They secured the short-term advantage and created the long-term enemy. They took the quick gain and destroyed the slow-building trust that would have produced 10 times the gain across the following years. The long game requires the patience I have described throughout this video and throughout everything else I have written. The willingness to accept less now in exchange for more later. The discipline to hold position when the short-term opportunity to gain is available but the long-term cost of taking it is too high. Build for decades. Not because you have decades. Because the man who builds for decades builds differently from the man who builds for the next quarter. And the man who builds differently produces outcomes that the short-term optimizer, however clever, never reaches. The 21st and final law. The man who masters himself masters everything else. I have placed this last not because it is least important but because it is the law that all the others build toward. The foundation of everything I have described across 20 laws of power, positioning, alliance, timing, reputation, restraint, and strategic intelligence rests finally on this: the capacity to master yourself, to know what you value and to act consistently with those values regardless of what the moment seems to require, to control your reactions rather than be controlled by them, to hold your direction when every social force is pushing you toward a different one, to remain yourself under the specific pressure of attraction, of opposition, of success, of failure, of the opinions of people you respect and the opinions of people you do not. This mastery is not achieved. It is practiced daily. Across every interaction and every decision and every moment when the easier thing was available and you chose the harder one because the harder one was consistent with who you have decided to be. I spent my entire life practicing it, not always successfully. I reacted when I should have held still. I explained when I should have remained quiet. I sought validation from men who were not capable of giving it genuinely. But I also built. Across all of it, through everything fortune did to me and everything I did to myself, I kept building. The thinking, the writing, the patient, daily, unglamorous work of trying to understand as clearly as I could what I had seen and what it meant and how to express it in a way that would still be useful long after the specific circumstances that produced it had been forgotten. That building is what lasted. Not the position I lost. Not the influence I failed to protect. Not the political career that fortune dismantled in a matter of weeks. The building. The patient, sustained, daily practice of mastering the one thing that was always and only mine to master. Myself. That is the 21st law. And it is the only one that, if you understand it deeply enough, makes the other 20 unnecessary to remember. Because the man who has genuinely mastered himself applies all of them naturally, without effort, as the expression of what he has built rather than as principles he has to consciously recall and deploy. Become that man. Not by remembering 21 laws. By building, daily and unglamorously and without ceasing, the interior life that makes the laws the natural expression of who you are. That is the whole of it. And it has always been available to any man willing to pay the price it costs. The price is not money. It is the daily discipline of becoming.